Chapter 3, A Forgotten Treasure. Jody and Brian biked down to the cove. They stood at the water's edge and looked out to where the ship rocked in the calm water. "Do you think the treasure is underneath the ship?" Brian asked Jody. "I don't know," Jody replied calmly. "Too bad I forgot my bathing suit or I'd race you." Jody knew that Brian wasn't serious. Even though it was a bright, sunny spring day, the ocean was much too cold for swimming. "Look how the ship moves a little with the tide," Jody pointed out. "It can move to one side of the anchor or the other. I don't think you could use an anchored ship to mark where a treasure is hidden." The boys stared at the ship. Suddenly, Jody noticed bubbles coming up through the water's surface. "Do you see that?" he asked Brian. "See what?" said Brian. "Those bubbles, there. I saw them again," Jody pointed. Brian saw them too. They broke the surface of the water just behind the ship. "What are they?" he asked. "They look like air bubbles from a diver's tank. Maybe the thieves read the poem and are thinking the same thing we are, and that the treasure is underneath the ship. So they got scuba gear to go check it out." Jody started looking around the bushes nearby. "Bingo, I found their stuff," he cried. He was peering into a bush at a large canvas bag and 2 pairs of sneakers. The bag was open, and Jody saw an old notebook lying on top. He knelt down to get a closer look. It was the diary. "Hey, Jody," whispered Brian. "I think they're coming up. Let's get out of here." Jody grabbed the diary. "Wait," he whispered back to Brian. "Let's just see if we can get a peek at the thieves." He pulled Brian behind another bush. The divers emerged from the water. They wore wetsuits and masks. It looked impossible to tell what they looked like. "Do you think anyone saw us?" asked one of the divers. Jody could tell that it was a woman's voice. Both divers were taking off their masks, but now they had their backs to the boys. "No," answered the other diver, a man. "It's almost dinner time. You know those small towns. Everyone eats together on schedule." "Lucky for us, this is such a small, trusting town. Getting into the museum last night was so easy. No security guard. They'll never find out it was us," the woman bragged. "But if we don't find the treasure, it'll all be for nothing," the man snapped back. "Come on, let's get dressed. I'm starving." "Hey, did you take the diary?" asked the woman. "No, it was in the bag," the man answered. Jody saw the woman dump the contents of the bag onto the ground. "Well, it's not here now," the woman said, alarmed. Jody held his breath. The divers were only a few feet away. His sweaty hands gripped the diary. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a loud noise. Brian sneezed so hard he knocked himself over backwards. Jody grabbed Brian's arm and pulled him to his feet. The diary slipped from his fingers. He paused a moment, not wanting to leave it behind, but he couldn't risk getting caught. The boys got on their bikes and took off. Jody could hear the surprised voices of the divers behind them. "What was that?" asked the woman. "It was a sneeze. Somebody must be spying on us," answered the man. "Look here," the woman cried. "They left the diary." The boys biked back up the hill to the museum. "Do you think they got a good look at us?" asked Brian, panting for air. "Maybe not a good look," answered Jody, "but they know someone saw them. They may be looking for 2 kids on bikes," he added. Brian looked nervous, then he sneezed. "Allergies," the boy sniffed. "I need a tissue." They walked back into the museum. "I'll be back in a second." Brian headed toward the bathroom. Jody waited for him up the front hall. He looked up at the model ship. The wood was carefully carved and polished to a high gloss. The sails were cut from canvas and attached to the masts with a fine string. Jody had never seen anything so beautiful in his life. He took a step closer to get a better look and tripped over the edge of a rug. Jody looked down at the old worn rug underneath his feet. A sign on the wall said that Captain Bracken had had this rug made for this hull. Jody examined the rug. It pictured many different types of ships on a blue and green background. "Blue and green. That's it!" Jody exclaimed. "What's it?" asked Brian, walking toward him. He blew his nose into a piece of tissue paper. "Beneath my ship, all blue and green." He was talking about his model ship. "I bet the treasure's buried in that rug."